So let's dive in. Throughout the mythology of the world, there are stories that echo the memory of a fall, that threshold moment where everything we thought we were, all the masks of identity, are stripped away. The darkness calls not to punish us, but to remember ourselves. This is the journey of descent, the ancient path where truth is born through our undoing. Across time and tradition, the story repeats. The journeyer who descends, loses, and rises transformed. It's the oldest initiation, the soul's spiral into the underworld where the light we thought we lost is waiting to be remembered, that spark of our spirit held within the very core of our being, our essence. Inanna, Sumerian queen of heaven and earth, hears the call echoing from the darkness, her sisters' cries of anguish screaming from the deep. She steps toward the underworld to visit her shadow self, personified as her sister. At the first gate, she surrenders her crown, the first mask of her ego identity, and continues bared, humbled into the dark. 7 gates she passes through into the underworld, and at each gate, another layer of her identity is stripped away, symbols of her false power, until she stands naked and trembling before her sister Ereshkigal, the embodiment of grief, the exiled self. This is the threshold of death and the full surrender into nothingness. In the Gnostic story, Sophia, or divine wisdom, falls from the heavens, reaching for creation, seeking the divine light outside of herself. She descends into matter, into materialism, forgetting her own brilliance, and wanders lost into the density of the world. Her fall becomes the story of every soul who forgets their true essence. Inanna, Sophia, Persephone, Psyche, even Jesus, all descended into shadow to remember their light. The descent is not the opposite of ascension, it is the pathway to it. Destruction and surrender are the gatekeepers of renewal, the resurrection of spirit within. These myths are not ancient history, they're mirrors of our own becoming. The descent is written into the memory of our living being. We each carry an underworld within us, that place we must go to face ourselves and retrieve the truth of who we are. For me, that descent began early, in childhood, a house filled with love and an ache slowly weaving itself into my bones. I learned to survive by hiding my heart and hardening off to my sensitivities, becoming what was safe and accepted, but unseen. I didn't yet know that survival is not the same as living. These wounds of childhood echoed forward by the age-old story of attracting pain that felt familiar. Abuse disguised as love, chaos mistaken for passion. I sought reflection in places that mirrored only my unhealed self. This descent deepened as I mistook destruction for love. Alcohol dulled the ache. Shame became a home I knew too well. My body turned into a battleground, my heart held hostage by wounds unacknowledged. Like Inanna, I found myself hanging on the hook, lifeless but still alive, suspended between who I was and who I was meant to be, stuck in perpetual purgatory. There were many deaths, physical, emotional, spiritual. I died 1,000 times, each one carving away another layer of pretense. I kept meeting endings until I understood. Death was not my enemy. Death was my teacher, the destroyer of illusion, the midwife of my being. To live in this body was agony, chronic pain, exhaustion, the unbearable density of flesh. I wanted to leave it all behind, to truly die and end it all. But descent demanded presence, to feel everything I had numbed, to meet the ache with heart and eyes wide open. I had to face myself and look into the wisdom of the wound and discover grace. And then birth, the most visceral descent and ascent I'd ever known. Through pain and blood and surrender, life emerged through me. In that moment, I touched the threshold of creation itself, the divine spark moving through matter. I knew in that moment when I first held my child, I had to rise. I was stripped bare as I stood naked, raw, exposed. Who I thought I was, I could no longer be. So what remained was an emptiness, a void in the perception of self. And in that emptiness, I met something vast, the quiet hum of being itself, my essence, a truth that cannot be destroyed. The divine spark, that was what had been waiting all along. I touched it when I felt that same energy move through me in birth, not a fire I needed to create, but one I had simply forgotten that existed here within. The light returned, not through striving, but through surrender, through devotion to presence and remembrance. And from that emptiness, I began to rebuild. Through curious exploration, through confronting, through loving these wounded parts of me, to learn to embody not the old self, but the true one. To live a life rooted in being, not doing, each breath an act of remembrance, each day a prayer to stay embodied. What rose from the ashes wasn't something I built, but something I remembered. The light within me was never extinguished. It wasn't waiting in the sky or in the heavens, but deep in the marrow of my bones, steady and eternal. A reclamation of all the parts of me I had exiled in an attempt to find love and belonging in this world. Now, all of us move through cycles of death and rebirth in our lifetime. What these initiations look like is different for each of us, but the transformation is universal. And right now, we are in a collective descent. The old illusions of control, separation, and dominance are cracking apart. The underworld calls us to face this shadow. Descent teaches us humility, responsibility, and accountability. It reminds us that our light is not found by escaping the darkness, but by witnessing the wisdom buried within the abyss. It is through an initiation into the depths that we meet our own divinity and rise whole and true with one another. We return, each of us, empty but full-hearted. The descent strips away what was never true so that only the essence remains. This is the collective remembering. We remember that the light we seek lives within us all. It endures every death, outlasts every darkness. This is the eternal spark of who we are, sovereign, luminous, and free. Thank you.